Um, Also, I want to let everyone know and remind everyone that there's going to be $300 in Amazon gift cards being randomly given out today and at each of the financial literacy events. So please fill out the form that I will put into the chat at the end of the session. That will be put into the chat about 5 minutes before the end of the event. And if you are part of our financial literacy program, if you registered for that, this is a required component to receive credit for obtaining a certificate and to receive credit for attending today's event. Any questions that come up during the presentation can be put into the chat, and then we will let our presenter know of those questions, and hopefully those will be answered throughout. We will also have time for questions at the end of the session. And speaking of our presenter, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our presenter for today, Dr. Jennifer Bethel, who is a professor of science at Babson College and the faculty director of the Babson Financial Literacy Project. Dr. Bethel served as the chief economist for the Division of Corporation Finance at the Securities and Exchange Commission and later consulted to its Division of Economics and Risk Analysis. Dr. Bethel has a Bachelor of Business Administration from the University of Texas and a Master of Arts in Economics and a PhD from UCLA. So I want to welcome Dr. Bethel. We are very glad to have you here today.
Thank you, Isabella. Thank you all for coming today. We're excited. Excuse me. I have with me today also Robin Kahn. Robin is the program director for the Babson Financial Literacy Program, and she won't like the word decades, but decades of experience in financial services and nonprofits.
Welcome all.
So today, in terms of asking questions, we're going to ask you to put questions in the chat. Isabella and Robin are going to be monitoring the chat, and so we're happy to answer questions as we go along. We'll also stay on afterwards to answer any questions that we don't get to. There's no unimportant question. The only question is, can we get to it in the allotted hour? If we can't, we'll do it afterwards. So today, actually, I'm going to share my screen now. We're going to be talking about becoming money savvy. And when we talk about money savvy, there we go. We're going to think about this in terms of choosing banks, and understanding bank products. Throughout your life, you're going to have money, and the question is what do you do with it? And so we're going to be talking about banks today. Before we get started, I always have to do a disclaimer. I'm a finance professor from Babson College. I am not a certified financial planner, and so I'm not legally allowed to give advice, because to give advice, you have to know each and every individual. But what I can do is give you best practices. I can give you ways to think about the problem, rules of thumb. And so that's what I'm going to be doing today. Some of the things I'm going to say will make sense to you. You'll go like, wow, what a great idea. Others, you're going to be like, that makes no sense at all for me. Absolutely, because each of you is in your own context. And so this is about you. It's not about me. It's not about Robin. It's about you and figuring out what works for you. So before we get started, I'm going to put a poll in. I'm going to launch a poll. It's really quick. It's 2 questions. Do you have a bank or credit union? If so, what is its name? And your choices are JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Citibank, a credit union, or some other. And the second question is if you have a bank or credit union, which types of accounts do you have? And you have some choices. You may end up checking more than one, a credit account, a savings account, a money market account, a certificate of deposit, other, or maybe you're not sure. And then the third question that I'd like you to add into the chat is, how did you pick where you bank? Like, what made you decide where to go? So if you have a checking account or a savings account, you're at some bank, how did you figure out which bank to use? Close to my home.
Lots say parents.
A lot of say parents. Good interest rates. I saw that go by. Less fees. Some of you are conscious of what it's going to cost. Yeah. Friends. Yeah, these are very common types of answers. Let me share the poll with you really quickly. You all are very evenly distributed across different financial institutions. Bank of America appears to get the most votes. JP Morgan. So there's a lot of what I would call brick and mortar banks. So these are ones that are going to have standalone, freestanding, or maybe in a strip mall kind of banks. In terms of what kind of accounts, most of the people appear to have checking accounts. Some of you also have a savings account. A few of you have a money market account or a certificate of deposit. And we'll talk about why you would have one or the other of these different kinds of accounts. Yeah, a lot of you will find that when you're in college, community college, banks have really wonderful deals for you. Maybe the fees are free. As soon as you turn 24, the deal stops, and you'll find that you're going to be charged some fees. So I guess what I would my takeaway from what's coming up in the chat is many of us, banking and money is personal, and it's what I call a trust product. And so many of us are going to rely on our family, our friends, for recommendations. But what I want you to think about today as we talk about banks is a bank is personal, and what you need in a bank may not be what your parents need in a bank. So I have two sons. Actually, one was living in Eagle Rock until very, very recently. They don't need the same kind of bank services that I need. And so honestly, it's not that great of a fit for them to bank at the same bank that I bank. So as we go through, think about what it is you need out of a bank and what kind of a bank might meet your needs. Okay, so what are we going to talk about today? So what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about how banks work. And the reason why that's important is the way banks work determine how they make money and how you pay fees. And once you understand how they work, then you'll understand how to manage the amount of money that you give your bank. We're going to talk about how to choose a bank. And finally, we're going to talk about different bank products and when is this one good for you and when might this one be good for you. So really quickly, how do banks make money? So we start with depositors. That would be you, me, Isabella, all of us. We put our money in a bank, and maybe it's a checking account, a savings account, money market, certificates of deposit. We put our money in, and in exchange, we have the right to go take it out. Depending on the kind of account, we're going to have different rights in terms of accessing that money. We're going to talk about the differences in these accounts in a few minutes. They're going to be charging us fees. They're providing us services, and so they're going to charge us fees. And those fees are going to be everything from monthly maintenance fees to fees if, for example, we write a check and it bounces, right? They're going to charge us fees for that. To the extent that we become a borrower as well, I noticed in the chat someone was saying they got a car loan from their bank, right? So that person is a borrower. The bank takes that money that the rest of us have given the bank and makes a loan for that car. And in exchange, they're going to get interest and principal on that car loan repaid. And so they're also going to be making money there. So when we think about this, is to the extent that we give the bank money, we may make a little bit of interest on the money that we give the bank. They're going to turn around and make that loan. And they're going to make that loan for more money than what they're paying us to use our money. So that's going to be the basic schematic of what this bank is. So when we think about these different kinds of products, bank products, we want to think about what does it cost us to use these products. Someone just asked, do you recommend getting a credit card? We're actually going to do a whole workshop on credit cards and credit reports and scores. I think maybe in the fall. So I'm going to put that one off. Okay, Robin, can you put the comparing banks case in the chat? What I'd like for you to do, Robin's going to put the case in the chat. If you could download the case, oftentimes I find it's easier for you to read it on your computer screen than try to read it through Zoom. So what we're doing here is we're talking about how to compare banks and how to choose a bank. So if you look at exhibits 2 and 3, there are two banks. One is called National Bank. This is one of those bricks and mortar banks that I was talking about. It could be JP Morgan, Citi, B of A. They typically have a very similar cost structure. And the other bank that we're looking at is, I'm going to call it online bank. So this is a bank without bricks and mortar. This would be a bank like USAA. There are a number of online banks. The thing to keep in mind is as long as it is supported by the FDIC, your money is guaranteed. It doesn't matter whether it's bricks and mortar or it's online. The thing that you want to make sure is that it is FDIC insured. As long as it's that, then your money isn't going to go anywhere. So what Exhibit 2 and Exhibit 3 are, is it's comparing the fees for these two banks. And you'll see that there's monthly service fees and ATM fees if you go get money from your bank. So all these different fees. If you have a question about what the fees are, if you go back to Exhibit 1, it actually describes what the fees are. And so no, we're not going to have a vocab quiz here. But what I want you to do is think about a situation. It's a situation that I'm familiar with a young adult who I know. And what happened is, so here's the story. So this young person had a beginning balance. Whoops. Had a beginning balance in their bank of $175. And they knew they needed to write some checks, and they needed to write 3 checks. A check for $100, they needed to pay a bill for $80, and they needed to write a check for $25. And so they looked at this and said, I don't have enough money. But they had a friend that they had lent some money to. So they went back to the friend, and the friend felt terrible. He owed $400, and so said immediately, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, totally forgot about it. Let me write you a check for $400. So the wonderful thing was, the friend repays $400. And so at this point, this person had $575 in their checking account. So they wrote the first check. So check number 1 was for $100, which brought them down to $475. Check number 2 was $80, which brought them down to $395. And then they needed to write one last check for $25, which brought them down to $370. So everything's working out wonderfully well. The problem is that when they went to put this $400 into the bank, it actually took a couple of days to clear. It was a paycheck, and there was a hold on that paycheck. And so what actually happened is the beginning balance was $175. There was no $400 for a few days. And so they wrote that $100 check, which took them down to $75. They wrote that $80 check, which took them to -5. So right now, we have our first check that bounces. So that's check number one that bounces. They go on and they write that $25 check because they don't realize the $400 isn't there. And so now they're at -$30. So here's our second check that bounces. Robin, they say they didn't get the file.
I see. I'll do it again.
Okay. Thanks.
It's out there. I think I see it. We'll see. Okay.
So the question is, what happens in terms of the fees that your bank is going to actually charge you? So what I'd like you to do is look at Exhibit 1 in the case and think about what fees you're going to get charged. And if you'll put the fees into the chat, that would be great. Oh, good. Everybody's got the case now. So we have overdraft, excessive rate, withdrawal, not sufficient funds, minimum balance, a return deposit fee, okay, so it looks like you guys are totally getting the story here. So let's think about a world first where we don't have any overdraft protection. So no overdraft. And we're going to think about what would happen at each of these two banks. We've got National Bank and we've got Online Bank. So let's start with National Bank. No overdraft. So here we have National. So the first fee is, let's start with non-sufficient funds. Someone who put non-sufficient funds in the chat, tell me, what is non-sufficient funds? You can just speak out.
They're not able to speak out because they're muted.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you put it in the chat, please? The check will bounce. You don't have money in the account. Exactly. It's exactly what it sounds like. Not sufficient funds. You don't have enough money. So you have non-sufficient funds. In this case, how much do you get charged for National Bank if you don't have sufficient funds? So National Bank, non-sufficient funds. You've got two checks times $35 a check or $70. What about Online Bank? What are you going to get charged with Online Bank? 2 times 29, absolutely. So we've got 2 checks times $29 per check, or $58. Okay. Our next fee that I saw in the chat was the deposited item return fee. What's the deposited item returned fee? Someone in the chat. Depositing a bounce check, exactly. So this is your friend gave you that check for $400, you deposited it, it bounced, you get charged. So you only actually deposited one check that bounced. So there's going to be one check for National Bank. How much do you get charged? National Bank, it's going to be $12. And online is going to be 1 times $5. Okay. This is not looking good. This was a huge mistake on the part of your friend when he gave you the check and he didn't tell you, don't write any checks for a couple of days. The next fee we're going to look at is the returned check fee. What's a return check fee? Somebody put it in the chat, please. What's a return check fee? So if you So this is a fee that's coming from the other person's bank, right? So you write that check for $80. Someone else goes to deposit it, it bounces. That person's bank is going to charge a fee and they're going to charge it back to you through your bank. Does that make sense to everyone? So we had 2 checks that bounced. And that return check fee is $15. And so we're looking at $30. That online bank, we've got 2 checks. In this case, it's the same cost, or $30. So if we look and say, how much total did we end up spending because of this little problem? At the National Bank, it's $112. At the online bank, it ends up being $93. So neither is fabulous, but obviously online is a little cheaper. Why do you think the online bank is cheaper? They don't have to pay for a building. They have very low overhead. Everything is done automatically. It's done electronically. Yeah, their costs of doing business are lower. Okay, so now let's think about, so this is where there's no overdraft. What is overdraft? Can someone tell me what overdraft is? When you overdraw the account, what happens? So you have a negative balance, and then what is overdraft protection? So the balance goes negative, and they transfer money from another account that you have. So say, for example, you've got a checking account, you have a savings account. You don't have enough money in your checking, so they suck it out of the savings. So that's one version. There's another version where you don't have enough money in your checking account, they go to suck it out of your savings account, and there's nothing there either. So in this case, there's sort of two types of overdraft protection. And what it says is the bank goes on and honors it. They essentially let you go negative, but they charge you a fee. So in this world, you don't actually bounce a check, but you have to pay the overdraft fee. So let's go back to national. And we have online. And so this time, instead of having that non-sufficient funds fee, we're going to have an overdraft fee. So at national, we're going to draw our account down below zero twice. So we've got the two checks, and it's $35 per item. And so that's going to be $70. Online, it's a little bit cheaper. So here it's 2 times and it's $25 per check, or $50. We still have the deposited item return fee. So this is where we tried to put in that $400 check and it bounced. And so we get charged $12. We only get charged $5 with online. And then the last thing is we still have the returned check fee. But guess what? We don't bounce the check, so there's no return check fee. So that's going to be zero here in each case. That's what the overdraft protection buys us, is we don't get the return check fees. So when we add up the total, now it's $82 and $55. So there are two things that are going on here. One is the difference between national and online. Online, in both cases, is less expensive. And there's the difference between having overdraft protection and not having overdraft protection. In this case, overdraft protection saved us quite a bit of money. Okay, the one thing that I do want to point out, though, is you can get yourself in trouble with overdraft protection. Because say you go and you buy a cup of coffee with your debit card, and it's a $4 cup of coffee, and you've got overdraft protection. You will end up spending another $35 for that cup of coffee if you don't have enough money in your account because of the overdraft protection fee. So that is the most expensive cup of coffee you will ever spend. You'll have a $39 cup of coffee. So you need to be super careful with overdraft protection. In some ways, it's a gift in that you don't get those return check fees. On the other hand, you do get these overdraft protection fees, and those can really add up. Say you do like 4 or 5 little transactions in a row, every single one of them will cost you an additional $35. The one thing that I would say is banks have gotten sensitive to all the bad PR they have around this. And so there are a couple of ways to kind of try to not have this happen. One is just to watch your balance super carefully, right? We all have our bank balances on our phones. The other way to do it is to set alerts. I can't think of a bank that doesn't allow you to set a low account alert. And what that does is you can set whatever level you want, but if you want to say, if my balance in my account goes below 100, send me a text. And so that is a great way to keep you from A, bouncing checks, and B, from getting these overdraft protection fees. Just so you know, this is a huge business. It doesn't seem like it should be a huge business. Banks in the year 2020 made over $30 billion in overdraft fees. So this is where you and I are supporting this $30 billion. So sort of the key takeaway today is do not be part of that $30 billion. The other thing that is true is what they're doing is they're essentially making you a very short-term loan. When they do this overdraft protection, they're covering you, right? They're giving you a little tiny loan. In this particular case, they end up loaning you, $30, but they're going to charge you $112 for that $30 loan. The CFPB, which is a Consumer Protection Bureau, has estimated that the average interest rate on these loans is 17,000%. That is insane. So please don't take a loan for 17,000%. Yeah, one comment that I see in the chat is if you complain, they can remove the fees. Oftentimes what they'll do is if you call them, what they'll do is they'll reorder the checks. And so instead of doing the 100, the 80, the 25, they'll do something like the 25, the 80, and then the 100. So you only bounce one check. Or sometimes if you're a really good customer, they'll even give you like, today is your day. We're not going to charge you at all. But that only happens probably once or twice, and then they're not going to be doing it. But it's very counterintuitive to actually want to reach out and talk to a banker, but I encourage you to do that. So what do these fees look like? So here are the average monthly maintenance fees. I'm going to make this a little bigger so you all can see. Bank fees are high, right? So right now, most of you are students. If you're a student, you probably are not paying bank fees. But when you turn 24, most banks will no longer consider you a student. The average maintenance fee in 2020 was $15.50. Which means you're spending about $180, $190 a year just for having a checking account. So again, if you look at, for example, the online banks, about 2/3 of them don't even have a monthly maintenance fee. I love the comments in the chat. The next thing to look at are the average overdraft fees. So here are our average overdraft fees. The federal government actually came out and asked, in this really difficult financial time, would banks be willing to waive overdraft fees? And the response is they actually increased them. So the average overdraft fee in 2020 was $33.47. So you can see that that actually is up from the first quarter of 2020. In terms of average ATM fees, this is the other place to be super careful. When you go to an ATM, if you go to your bank's ATM, usually it's free to take money out. If you go to another bank's ATM, that bank will charge you and your bank will charge you. And on average, they're going to charge you about $4.63 in fees to take out your money. So if you take out $50, they're going to charge you almost 10% in fees for doing that. So be super, super careful about what ATMs you take money out of. Make sure that it is your bank's ATM. Again, the exception are online banks. For the most part, they don't have bricks and mortar. So what they've done is they've gone and they've made arrangements with other banks to let you use those ATMs. So like some of them will have ATMs in CVS and Walgreens. Another one will let you use like Citi's ATMs. And what they'll do is they'll say you can have up to a certain number of withdrawals or deposits in a month. And usually it's a pretty generous number. But before you get all excited about online banks, make sure you understand how you can actually get your money out of them, and if that particular bank, their ATM situation works for you. Okay. So, Robin, would you put the next case in the comparing bank products case?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. So that we've talked a little bit about choosing a bank. And again, choosing a bank is something personal. I look at my sons and they honestly, they don't need to ever step inside a bank. Everything they do is electronic. They are probably not great candidates for high fee, high service brick and mortar banks. I'm a much better candidate for that. And I'll tell you, my accounts are actually at a brick and mortar bank, and I indirectly pay high fees for that. So different people have different needs, and you just need to think about what are your needs. So what are the kinds of things that you can actually do with your money in a bank? So these are the basic bank products. And one of the things that you're going to see as we go, from top to bottom, is there going to be some trends. The first trend is we're going to have what I'm going to call accessibility. Accessibility. How easy is it to get your money out? And as we go from a checking account, that is the easiest money to get your money out of. The certificate of deposit is going to be the hardest. We're also going to look at something called interest. Can somebody put in the chat what interest is? The rate of return, the money earned on your money. The amount your money accrues, the price of money. Yep, absolutely. So in this world, you're giving your bank money. You are lending your bank money. In exchange for lending them the use of your money, they are going to give you interest back. Now, it's not as helpful to lend the money that you can say, I can get it back whenever I want. It's more useful to them if you can say, I'm going to lend you money for 30 days. And in this 30 days, I don't have access to my money. That's much easier for them to go out and make a car loan with if they have some kind of a guarantee for you that you're going to leave your money with them. And so the longer you're willing to give them your money, the more interest they're going to pay. And so as we go from top to bottom, we're going to go from low interest rates to higher interest rates. Right now, interest rates are crazy tiny. It's like a fraction of a percent for something like a checking account. There have been times, however, when checking accounts paid 15%. That was in times of very high inflation. So right now, checking accounts, you really don't earn much on it, but you have what I would call perfect access. You can go to your ATM and you can get your money out. And with most checking accounts, you can take it out as often as you want. Your savings account is going to be a little bit, by the way, this is perfect for things like bill writing, right? You're going to be taking money in and out all month, your phone bill, your rent, your utilities, your whatever it is that you are spending money on. This is the account that really works well for bill paying. Your savings account is someplace that you're going to want to put your money that is safe. All of these are FDIC insured, or at least you need to make sure whatever the bank is, that it is insured. which means the federal government absolutely positively guarantees that if you put your money in, you are guaranteed to be able to take it out. Your savings account, it's also very safe. It's a little bit less accessible. Most savings accounts will have some limit, like you can only take money out 6 times a month. So it's not perfect accessibility, but still, I mean, how many times do you need money out of your savings account? And your interest rate is going to be a little bit higher, right? Because you've given up a little of accessibility for it. So your interest rate is going to be a little bit higher. This is the kind of account that's going to be great for something like an emergency savings fund, because it's safe, it's accessible, and you're earning a little bit of interest. Your money market savings account is going to be very much like that other savings account, except usually it is even a little bit less accessible. So maybe you can only take money out 4 times a month, right? Every bank is going to have its own rules. So you'll have to make sure you understand your bank's rules. And again, your interest rate will be a little bit higher because you've given up a little bit of accessibility. The final is your certificates of deposit. And this is where you really give up on the accessibility. So this is going to be your lowest accessibility, but your highest interest. These are actual contracts that you have. It's actually almost like a loan document. You're lending this bank money. And typically it's going to be for something like 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. You pick the length of time that you're willing to not touch that money. And in exchange, they're going to give you this higher interest rate. If you absolutely positively need that money, you probably can get it back, but you're going to pay a penalty. And that penalty is going to be a hurt. So this is where you want to put that money that you really don't need to touch. This would be for something like your tuition, right? You know, you don't need your tuition until August. You can count the number of months. You can put that money into a 3-month CD or a 6-month CD. This would be great for a vacation. In summer of 2022, you want to go to fill in the blank. And this would be a great place to do it because you know you don't need that money for, a year. So that's the kind of use that you would have for a CD. In terms of how much money you put in, usually there are minimums for different interest rates. So what I want you to do is take a look at this picture. This is actually the exhibit in the case that you downloaded from the chat. Take a look and tell me if you see any patterns in these interest rates. So here's your interest checking. You get 0.1%. That's not much interest. Your savings, you get 0.03%. Money market savings, 0.03. Then you get down to these certificates of deposit. Some of them have a $1,000 minimum. Some of them have a $10,000 minimum. What I know, wow, almost nothing for your money. Yeah, it's a little bit scary. Interest rates are very low right now. By the way, it stinks if you're putting your money into a bank, but it's fabulous if you're borrowing money, right? For anyone who is trying to buy a car or a house, interest rates are unbelievably low. So it kind of works for you, but it also can work against you. What patterns do you see? Years? Whoever said years, what do you see? More time is equal to more interest. Yep. Yeah, so as we go from tying our money up for 1 to 11 months to 12 to 17 months, in both cases, we have that $1,000 minimum. We go from 3 to 5%. You'll also notice as you go from 1,000 minimum to a $10,000 minimum, you also see it go up. So the same amount of time it's tied up, but you increase the amount of money you have tied up, you also get more interest. So the longer you tie your money up and the more money you give them, the higher the interest that you're going to earn. Doesn't seem like much interest, but the alternative is to get nothing. What happens to you if you don't invest your money? What's the risk that you run? Inflation. That's the big risk, right? Because the price of everything increases, but your money is just sitting there earning nothing. So for most investments, on average, over the long haul, the return on your money at least covers inflation plus some little premium for the amount of risk. But remember, these are guaranteed by the federal government, so there's not a lot of risk here. So you're not going to get paid very much for your risk. Now, I saw some things go by with Roths, and we'll talk about Roths later. When you start talking about investing in stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, all of those wonderful things, and again, stay tuned, we'll get there in another workshop, you're going to earn a lot more, but there's risk, right? These are very, very safe products. If you put them in today, they're going to be there tomorrow. Okay. So, key takeaways. Tell me, what are your key takeaways from today? Average rate of inflation runs between 2 and 3%. You can take the money out without a penalty, but you have to tell them what to do with the money. So most banks will have a rollover provision. So if you have it in for 3 months, they will automatically roll it into another 3-month CD, in which case you can't take your money out without a penalty. But if before that first 3 months expires, you tell them to either put it into your checking or your savings, or you want a check, like you want cash, then you can take it out without penalty once you hit that 3-month mark. But you have to tell them in advance what you want to have happen.
Lots of good responses here. They vary, right? Watch fees, pick the right bank. You watch your balance.
In terms of taking it exactly on the 3-month mark date, that is the date that they will close that CD. That CD is called maturing. Your CD matures on that day. So you just tell them, when my CD matures, I want to do fill in the blank. I want cash. I want you to put it in my checking account, whatever you want. The right banks and services, check your bank account frequently, set an alarm, an alert. Yeah. So sort of in summary, what I would say is you have to really know what you want and what you need. So it comes down to choosing the bank. It comes down to choosing your bank products, right? Why are you putting your money in the bank? And if it's to pay bills, then you need a checking account. If you want to put your emergency savings account there, then you're probably talking about either a savings account or a money market account. If you want to try to earn a little bit of money because you're saving for a particular event or item, then you might want to think about these certificates of deposit. So there's definitely a message here about fit. So one of the things that we want to give you access to is our online financial platform. So one of the things that you'll notice is there's no advertising with any of this. I'm a professor at Babson. Robin is an employee of Babson. So we're not selling anything. We're not going to email you. We're not going to try to cross-sell you products. And that's also true about this online platform. So what the online platform is it's super easy to sign in. Good news, it recognizes me. And what it is there are a number of learning modules that you can just use on your own. And again, no cross-selling, none of that. The other thing that I really love is the My Budget, and we'll talk about that later in this semester. There's going to be a Managing for Your Best Life. And that's a wonderful tool. But I'll show you a tool. This is like one of these are some of my favorite things. So, for example, how much do my habits cost? So,
Jennifer,
yes.
Before you proceed, we're getting lots of questions. People want to know about accessing this. We're going to send a survey out in a few minutes, and you'll be able to opt in to get the email that will allow you to sign up. Sorry.
Oh, thanks, Robin. This was my green tea habit. And I'm a little embarrassed because, of course, I can make green tea at home, but it turns out there's a Starbucks on the way to work. And so I would always stop at Starbucks. And every day, I know this is embarrassing. My husband would be very disappointed to hear me confess. I would spend $4.23 on a large green iced tea. And I did that daily. So let's think about what happens. I've worked at Babson at least 10 years. And how much does that cost me over 10 years? It's a $15,000 habit that I have. I have to say, COVID has saved me a lot of money on my green tea. Isn't that cool? I love that tool. There are all kinds of other tools as well. So for example, we'll talk about credit scores at some point. We can talk about your loan amount. Say you buy a car and you take out a $10,000 loan, and it's a 5-year loan, and your interest rate is, let's just say, 7%. So that loan, you're going to end up paying almost $1,900 of interest on that loan. If you were to improve your credit score, and we'll talk about credit scores in a future workshop, if you can improve your credit score so your interest rate comes down by even 0.5%, you're going to save $141. So there's all kinds of wonderful, I would love to take credit for this. It's actually a friend of ours who has developed this. When you sign up, you will get an email from something called Kindros. So it's not phishing or spam or anything like that. You'll give in the survey, you'll put your email, and you'll get back an email invitation from Kindros. Let's see.
So it looks like Isabella, sorry, I'm trying to monitor the chat, put in the survey. We'll load it again in a minute once Jennifer's done talking, unless you're finished talking now.
You know what?
I know there's so many chats. It disappears.
I know. I want to thank all of you for coming today. This is Robin's and my passion. We're delighted you could come. The one thing that we ask of you is if you learned something today that you think is helpful, it is free to share knowledge. So share it with your friends, your family members, your colleagues at work, fellow students at Glendale. That's all we ask of you is let's spread the news so that we don't contribute to that $30 billion in overdraft protection fees, and you end up with the kind of bank and bank accounts that work for you. Robin, do we want to turn it over to Isabella? And maybe Robin, you can put the link in the chat while Isabella.
I think Isabella was going to put it in. I just want to respond to a few things. I saw a few questions about which email to use. You can use whichever email you'd like. You were wondering about how long you have access to the site. You have access as long as you'd like. And there's lots of great information. I saw people asking questions about wanting to learn about investing or retirement or credit cards, and you'll find information on all those topics. So enjoy, and we'll hopefully see you again soon. I'll turn it over to Isabella now.
Amazing. Thank you all so much. And thank you, Dr. Bethel, for your presentation. Thank you, Robin, so much for clarifying everything. Yes, I did put into the chat the survey where you can opt into this this online platform, excuse me, and I will put it in again just in case there's a lot of chats going on. So let me do that one more time for you all. This is also, I will repeat the little paragraph that I wrote about it, but this is also required for you to get credit, I guess, for attending this workshop. And so please make sure that you fill that out if you are looking to get credit for to get a certificate in financial literacy from us. That would be required. So you will also be entered into the giveaway, gift card giveaway of $300 if you enter your information into there. So there's no downside to filling out that form, and it will help us for future events to know what you all like. So I want to thank you all so much for everything that you have done today. We have we have 3 more financial literacy events this semester. So please come out to those if you're interested. There is more information on the ASGCC website about when those events are. And if you would like to register again for the financial literacy certificate, I will put that link as well. This is separate from the other form, so please don't get that confused. Here, that is right here. 1 second.
And I saw a few people asked how many they need to attend, how many workshops to get the certificate.
So that will be, as of now, we're doing, you will need to attend 6 different workshops. So if you attend the 2 different ones that are going on this semester, that will be 2 for this semester. If you do another 2 in the fall and another 2 spring 2022, that will be enough for you to complete the certificate. But you will need to fill out that form at the end, because that is how we keep attendance. So if that form is not filled out, then that will be like you didn't come to the event. So please, please, please make sure that you fill out that form. That is very important. And I also want to thank our ASL interpreters for interpreting this event. I know we went over a lot, so thank you for doing that as well. And are there any other things that you would like to say, Robin or Jennifer?
Robin and I will stay on for a few minutes. If any of you have specific questions, we're happy to chat with you one-on-one.
Okay, fantastic.